Please welcome Sara DeWitt.
So, good afternoon. I am so excited to be here. And also, I've already had so many conversations with you all about digital technology. This seems to be a theme at Imagine Solutions today. And I want us to take a little time to think about digital technology and kids, really little kids. So, I know that we all believe that these are pretty central to our lives. Deloitte says that we check our devices, grown-ups check our devices at least 50 times a day. And I'm sure you know that there is a furious debate raging right now about kids and these devices. There definitely is a lot of fear about, are they making kids antisocial? Do these devices drive obesity? Does it make kids just kind of do mindless activities for a long period of time? And because of my background and what I do, I have a child development background, and because I work in media, people often want to talk to me about this. And the number one question I get from parents is, how much screen time is okay for my kids? They're looking for a magic number, something that if you do less than, their kids are going to be okay. We just need to not exceed this. I think this is the wrong question. We need to spend a little less time thinking about the time kids are spending and more time thinking about the content that's being developed for kids on these devices. We've heard a few times today about the business models that have grown up around smartphones. Basically, you're rewarded for how much time people spend with them. Your app is more popular. You can get more advertising dollars if people are spending a lot of time. And so that drives the content decision. They want to do things that are going to suck you in, make you look at your phone for longer and longer periods of time. Unfortunately, this is the same business model that trickles down into the development of kids' content. Right now, the way to be successful in the kids' digital technology business is to make that game never quite end, so the kids will want to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. And it doesn't have to be this way. We really can think about this content differently. And what I want us to do is to think a little bit about not only how the content can be different, how it can inspire curiosity, how it can encourage kids to go outside and play, how it can make them see the world around them and think about how other people feel. We also want to think about the context in which kids are given these devices and when they're using them. What times make the most sense? So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am kind of an unlikely champion for kids and screen time. My focus in study was children and books. I wanted to study kids and literature. But as I got deeper into my child development studies, I kept getting more and more inspired by one of my heroes, Fred Rogers. It was 50 years ago and 1 week exactly that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood premiered on public television. And Fred Rogers was starting his show in the middle of a very similar screen time debate. It was the television, that box in the living room that was the vast cultural wasteland. It had the power to drive kids away from each other, to isolate them from their life. Fred Rogers famously said that he wanted to try his hand at television because he didn't like what he saw on it. He challenged us to look at it differently. He wanted to look at television as a tool to support emotional development in children. And so here's what he did. He looked out from the screen and held a conversation as if he was speaking to each child in his or her living room. He would ask questions and he would pause to give them time to think about it. You can see his influence across all of kids' television today, and I would say you can also see his influence across grown-up television. But at the time, this was actually really revolutionary. People weren't doing this kind of television, and he changed the way we thought about it. So today, it's not just one box. kids are actually surrounded by devices. They're all around them all the time. And I think we have a chance now to look at them through the lens that Fred Rogers was looking through them, to think about how can we create content on these devices? How can we make these devices tools for kids that can help them better understand the world around them? And there's some organizations that are doing some fantastic work for kids, building really great content. And commonsensemedia.org is a great place to learn about a lot of this kind of work. But I want to focus a little bit on the content that we're working on at PBS Kids, because I've been there for 19 years now. Actually, today is my 19-year anniversary. And we've had the luxury to be able to be free from those business models that are driving constant engagement because of donations that people are making to local stations and from foundations who have come to support our work. And it means that we've had the opportunity to create some things that kind of can respond to what we're seeing happen in the commercial media world. So I want to walk you through 3 different scenarios, really common scenarios that I hear about from parents and grandparents, and then show you some of the work and research we're doing to try to counter that. So first up, let's say that you're worried about how much screen time your kids are engaging in, that you're worried that they're kind of becoming couch potatoes and they aren't getting up and moving enough. So Chris Kratt and Martin Kratt are zoologist brothers, and they do a show on PBS Kids called Wild Kratts, where they talk about animals. And they wondered how we could use those cameras that are in all of our devices, on our computers and on our cell phones, to actually help kids mimic very natural play patterns, pretending to be animals. So we started with bats. And when kids came in to play this game, they loved it. They loved pretending to be the animal, and they liked being able to see the world from the animal's perspective. But my favorite part about this is that when we turned off the screen, the kids kept being bats. They kept flapping their wings around our research room. They kept jumping back and forth to try to capture mosquitoes. And it made us wonder, what happens now when kids go outside? Do they look at a bird and wonder, does that bird fly the same way that I was flying when I was a bat? I'm sure that they were still being bats in the parking lots as parents were trying to get them into their cars. But they were taking embodied learning out into the world. And this gameplay, this imaginative play, was helping them keep their bodies moving. So the next thing that I often hear is from folks who know that their kids are struggling with a different subject, like something specific like math. Math is the #1 thing that comes up. And they want to find a good way to work on math at home. So video game developers know that you can actually learn a lot about the player's skill by looking at the back end, what's happening in the data. So when does a player pause for a long time before they make a decision? Or when do they make a lot of wrong answers before they get to a right answer? You can take this same data analysis to kids' tablet games and to academic learning. So a PBS station in Boston, WGBH, developed a series of games for Curious George that were focused on early preschool math skills. And researchers brought in 80 kids and had them do a standardized math test. So we could see early on that the games these kids were playing were helping them understand these key skills. But a team at UCLA actually wanted us to go deeper into the data. And what they did is they built a neural net. And what that means is they trained a computer to take the kids' gameplay data and try to predict that child's standardized math test score based on that data. So here we have a subset of the children's math tests. Like, these are the scores they had on the math tests. And this is the computer's prediction based on these children playing Curious George games for 20 minutes. The accuracy is astonishing, especially when you consider the fact that we didn't develop these games to be a test. They were developed to be fun math games for a kid to play. The researchers involved in this work feel like games like these could actually tell us more about a child's cognitive learning than a standardized test can. So what could happen if a child could sit down and play games like these with a character that they love and a character that makes them feel comfortable? How can that help them learn things? How is this different than having to sit down and take a test? And then what kind of insights can this data give to parents and to teachers so that they can better focus their time with kids to help them work on the skills that are the hardest? So the third scenario is one that I think is probably the most common, and that is you have a grown-up in a household who desperately needs just 25 minutes to get something done. And so they quickly hand a tablet to a 3-year-old to keep them occupied. Now, imagine this scenario. Let's say the parent is making dinner, they've handed the tablet over, they feel kind of guilty about that. And then 20 minutes later, the parent gets a text message that says, Alex just matched 5 rhyming words. Ask him if he can come up with another rhyme for the word ball, or maybe cat. So when we gave tips like these to parents, they felt really excited and empowered. They wanted to play these games over dinner, and the kids loved it too, because not only did it feel like magic that the grown-up in the house knew what they had been playing, little kids really love to play games like these with grown-ups. So that act of just talking to kids about the media that they're experiencing can be really powerful. In 2016, Texas Tech University did a study with the show Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and they found that the show could actually promote empathy in children. But there was a really important catch. The gains were greatest if parents had talked to the kids about the show they watched. Not just watching and not just talking was enough. It was the combination that was the key. So as we think about these 3 examples, we're thinking about things that aren't just our quick last-minute babysitting option of giving a kid a tablet and not thinking about what content is on it. This is all content that's being created to think about the context in which a child might be experiencing it. Content that is hoping that the child will then be inspired to go outside and play. Or context that the child is going to be practicing some key skills for school, and now the parent will know which skills they need more help with. Or a context in which a child plays for a little while, and then they have a conversation with their mom or dad. I like to tell parents that this is a really interesting way to approach media, to be planning it, because we tend to just hand it to kids or put kids in front of it. But what if you tackled it like you do meal planning for the week? When you do meal planning, you have to think a little bit about, okay, what groceries do we have? I need to do some planning so I know what to buy. I need to do a little research so I know what recipes we're going to do, and I need to think about how much prep time I have each day. If you approach screen time the same way, you can think about, okay, what are the kinds of content that would make the most sense for my kid right now? What are they really interested in so I can choose something that would get them more excited? Or what skills do I want them to be working on? What time of day is going to make the most sense to do this? It just takes a little bit of upfront planning. And I'll tell you, it's not always easy. I'm going to tell you a story about my own life just on Saturday. The time when we most need screen time is when I am putting my younger child down for a nap. My kindergartner will come in and interrupt me 5 times if I don't have him really carefully occupied. So lately he's been really interested in animals and in dinosaurs and looking at the different features. So I chose a series of shows. I recorded several for him and gave him the choice. And when the show was over, and I had already come out from my other son's bedroom, I said, okay, it's time to turn it off. And of course, he said, please, can I just watch one more, please, please, please? And I said, you know what? I have a game over here that I really want to play with you. I have some time to play with you right now. And that actually got him to turn off the TV and walk over. And we got to sit down together and we played this game where you do a build-on drawing. And we created a new species of dinosaur. And he got to name it, and we were drawing it together, and we both were laughing. And at the end of that, he said, Mommy, that was my favorite part of today. And it was really my favorite part probably of the whole weekend. I want to leave you with one more thought, and that is that kids learn by watching grown-ups. Mr. Rogers said this, that play is the serious work of childhood. So when you see a kid playing house, when they're pretending to be a mom or a dad, they're looking at the world around them and playing it because they're practicing for what the world is going to be like when they're older. So what if children look around and they see grown-ups just like this all the time? What does that say to them about the hold that this device has over our lives? So we have a real opportunity to model good, positive ways of using technology. I am not an advocate for saying kids shouldn't have any tech at all. I believe that we have the chance to show kids that this is a really important device for finding the way to that new park, or for having a real conversation with your grandmother, or for doing a little bit of research and finding out what we're going to make tonight for dinner. And also, this is something that after we've used it for a little while, we turn it off and we put it away, just like you would clean up the blocks and put them back in the corner. It's an activity we do for a little while, and then we engage in conversation with one another, or we play a game together. We have to look really hard at the way we're using these devices around kids. And we have an opportunity to help them learn how to use them really wisely. Thank you.